Welcome back for another episode of Big Dawg Sports Unleashed. And this week, we got to cover the NFL playoffs. Today is the day. Week 1 of the NFL playoffs. We got the wild card round starting in just about 4 hours today. And I am super excited for all 6 of these games. I love playoff action. I love seeing which players step up when the moment is the biggest and who are the guys whose names you may not hear very often that get the big moment. Which teams win when it matters most. Because ultimately, regardless of whether your regular season was more of a disappointment, in most playoff teams it's not, but some of them are seen in a much different light than others. So we talk about, the Packers that limped in with the 7 seed. Is that going to be the end of their season, or are they going to win 1 or 2 playoff games and then all of a sudden we'll look at them as one of the best teams in the NFC this year and coming into next year? The Chargers, Justin Herbert had a fantastic season, was a top 5 MVP candidate according to Big Dawg Sports Unleashed. The Chargers for much of the season offensively with running backs out, offensive tackles out. He has yet to record a playoff win in his NFL career. He is 0-2. Last year, he had a terrible performance, throwing 4 interceptions. He also had that humongous collapse against the Jaguars before that. So is this the year that Justin Herbert finally gets his first playoff win? The Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, they have been so close so many times. They've been a great story. We all know how great Bills Mafia is as a fan base. We know how great of a player Superman Josh Allen is. But this year, the teams that have been the strongest in keeping them out of the way, the Kansas City Chiefs, no longer a factor. Even the Baltimore Ravens, who have been one of the top AFC contenders the last 5 years, no longer a factor. Is this the year that the Bills finally get all the way to the Super Bowl and give a chance to win their first one in franchise history? We shall see. They're at the Jaguars tomorrow morning. So, tons of great storylines coming into the NFL playoffs. The Packers and the Bears are playing for the 3rd time in the last 5 or 6 weeks. That's going to add another chapter to this epic rivalry story that's been going on for around 100 years now, and whoever wins this is going to be a huge leg up. The division's cool for the Bears. Great accomplishment in year 1 of the Ben Johnson era, but if they don't win this playoff game against the Packers, they're not going to feel too great about it because they're not even going to be the best team in their division. Their rival will have beaten them to eliminate them. And so this is a huge game for both of those franchises to set the story and the rivalry right of who's on top right now, who's the bigger contender, and who keeps their Super Bowl chances alive. For the 49ers, we know the story this year. They've been as banged up as anyone. They're losing tons of depth, tons of stars, tons of leaders, but they've had this miraculous season to have the division come down to the final week. They have a tough game, their worst offensive game in months, or maybe of the entire season. Yeah, they only scored 3 points, so they definitely didn't score less than that all year. Can they bounce back versus the Eagles? Are they going to get Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall back to help with that? Historically speaking, Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator of the returning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, has gotten the better of Kyle Shanahan's offense, but they haven't played each other in 7.5 years. So as Shanahan finally figured out what to do, is Brock Purdy so good that Fangio won't be able to get the better of him like he did a bunch of the inferior quarterbacks that Shanahan's had in the past? We shall see. The Eagles have had a rough regular season, but they're in such a horrible division. It was a cakewalk for them. Are they for real? Are they going to continue their path towards a repeat this year, or are they going to show that they got to go back to the drawing board and fix some of their cultural issues moving forward? So many storylines coming into the NFL. Our first game that we have in the next, starting in 3.5+ hours, is the Los Angeles Rams at the Carolina Panthers. This is by far the largest spread of any game. The Panthers are hosting this game as the 4 seed winners of the NFC South, and the Rams are flying out to Carolina, yet the Rams are favored by 10, and traditionally an even spread would be the home team by 3. So the Rams are so favored they move this line from the standard by 13 points, which makes sense because the Panthers have been hot or cold this year, much less consistent. The Rams have shown the ability to put up 40 plus against just about anyone. They're going to have their 2 elite elite number one wide receivers healthy. Matt Stafford is as dialed in as any player in the NFL right now. So I get the huge spread. One thing that many people may not be considering when they are giving 10 points for the road Rams going to Carolina is that these two teams played on November 16th. So that's less than 2 months ago. They played in Carolina, and the Panthers won that game 31-28. So I'm not saying that the Panthers are going to win again. I'm just saying that it's wild to have a double-digit road spread for a team that less than 2 months ago won at home against this team. So I definitely wouldn't take the Panthers straight up. But for our first pick of the 6 wild card rounds, we're going with Panthers plus 10.5 is what the spread is currently at. Give me the points. I'm not expecting the Panthers to win this outright, but I am not going to bet on some massive Rams domination. Would I be surprised if it happens? No. The Panthers have been very hot or cold, which is why, they only finished at 8-9 and needed a tiebreaker to get in, and why so many people across sports media and the radio are talking about how we need to realign the divisional playoffs. I don't really have a problem with how they are now. I don't care that the Rams have to go on the road to the Panthers. I don't care. The Niners had a better record than the Eagles. They're going on the road. We're not crying about it. Yes, it is a challenge, but if you realign, if you take away the divisions, then you also have to reset how the NFC teams are playing. You got to play every team in the NFC to make it fair. And I like having divisions. I like having rivalries. I think that's good for the NFL. So I think the only way to make it fair without having division winners is to not really have divisions and to play every team in the NFC, once, and then have a couple leftover AFC games. I think we got a good thing going. And if you're the team of destiny, going on the road shouldn't stop you anyway. So, or you could have won your division to do that. So, money line pick, probably would go with the Rams. But we're doing spreads here this week. So our first of the 6 picks, we got Panthers plus 10.5 at home against the Rams in a few hours. The next game that we have going on today, we got 2 Saturday games at, for the Pacific time window at 1 and 4:30. Tomorrow we got the full slate of a 10 a.m. game, a 1:30 game, and a 5 o'clock game. And then on Monday night, we have a night game as well for the 6th wildcard round game. So that's our first game. Moving on to our second game, the Saturday evening game. That's the big rivalry game we're talking about, Packers versus Bears. This will be the 3rd matchup between the Bears and the Packers in the last 5 weeks. On December 7th, the Packers beat the Bears in Green Bay 28-21, and then they played again a few weeks ago on December 20th, and the Bears in Chicago beat the Packers 22-6. So that's a 7-point win and a 6-point win each by the home team. So those games were both really close. They both were coming down to the wire. The other team driving down the field to try and tie it or take the win late. So this is going to be an epic matchup. These teams know each other very well, and I think the Packers, although they've been dealing with a good amount of injuries, should be pretty healthy for this game now. Jordan Love's had plenty of time to come back off the concussion. So in this game, the spread currently is at the Bears plus 1.5. Despite the Bears beating the Packers in Chicago 3 weeks ago and the Bears being at home again in this game, that's too good for me. I am taking the Bears and the points. The Bears are the home team. They won the most recent matchup. They won the division because of that most recent matchup and having a better record than the Packers in overall this year, of course. So I'm taking the points. If you got a home team in what amounts to maybe a 50-50 game, I'll take the points. So I'm taking Bears plus 1.5 in game 2 this evening. The Packers, I think, have been overrated for all of this year. And yes, I do think that Matt LaFleur has been a fantastic job as the Packers head coach. They've been competitive the whole time he's been there. They've had a bunch of great regular seasons. They've had a couple playoff wins, but ultimately this year has not been that successful for the Packers compared to how they were projected coming into this season as a top couple team in the NFC and a potential Super Bowl juggernaut. I'm not saying that's impossible, but their season hasn't played out, making that feel likely. The Bears have had much more of a Cinderella improving season. Maybe that's because of the expectations coming in. But Ben Johnson right now, it's hard to argue, in my opinion, that there is a better offensive play caller and offensive coordinator. Obviously, he's the head coach, but he runs the offense in the entire NFL right now. And yes, he hasn't quite established himself as much as a Kyle Shanahan, certainly not as much as an Andy Reid or a Sean McVay. And there's a few other guys that have done great that I could mention as well. But right now, I would say no one has been as dialed over the last 3-4 seasons as Ben Johnson. The Lions regress significantly without him. The Bears ascended significantly with him. So I think that Ben Johnson is a huge asset for the Bears. The Bears are a little healthier than the Packers. And I also think that being at home will certainly be an advantage here. So I'm taking the Bears plus 1.5 in the second game this evening. The third wildcard round that we have will be tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific. That's going to be the Buffalo Bills and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm very excited for this game because these are two teams that are really hungry for it. They're two great teams. As we mentioned in our prelude here, the Buffalo Bills have been around for a long time. They've been highly competitive in the playoffs with Josh Allen over the last 5-ish years, and they've been to AFC Championship games. They've been to the divisional round. They've won playoff games in most years, and they just haven't quite gotten over the hump to get to the Super Bowl yet. The main nemesis, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Chris Jones are out. Kansas City Chiefs are not out, so a lot of people are projecting the Bills. This is finally the year the Bills will make it through the AFC. Finally the year they'll win their first Super Bowl in franchise history. And although I'd honestly love to see that happen, outside of the Niners, I don't have another team that I truly root for. You can't do that if your heart's fully dedicated to one team, in my opinion. But the Bills are a team that's easy to like. Josh Allen is pretty easy to like. He's super fun to watch. His games are always exciting. They're never over unless they're dominating the opponent because they're never out of it. The Bills Mafia is admirable. They're great fans despite never having a championship. So it's easy to root for the Bills. I would love to see that storyline play out. Ultimately, I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars here because the Jaguars are only given 1.5. They're on an 8-game win streak right now. And yes, the playoffs is a different animal. Am I worried about Trevor Lawrence regressing some? Because he's played way better over the last month and a half. He's been a perennial bonehead in our segments earlier in the year. In the last month and a half, he's been an asset and not a liability for his team. So I worry that can stop. But overall, I'm taking the Jags. I think their overall roster construction is better. And I also love how dialed in Liam Cohen is right now as one of the best offensive play callers in the league as well. I think they're a more well-rounded team. The Bills require Superman performances from Josh Allen, especially if teams can slow down James Cook. Their defense isn't as good as it's been in years past, and their offense really has no great receiver. They have Josh Allen and they have James Cook, and they have a bunch of decent contributors. Not shitting on those guys, but none of them are superstars. None of them are 1,000-yard guys. None of them are double-digit touchdown guys. None of them are, okay, on 3rd and 4th down, this is who we're fucking going to. Like the Rams have Devontae Adams, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have established a few different very successful threats for their team lately on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm going to go with the home team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, to get this done and give that 1.5 points. Although I expect this to be a very good game. I expect this game to be coming down to the wire late in the fourth quarter and teams having a chance to drive and win it. And whoever makes that last big play will be the victor here. But I'm predicting that the Jaguars will be the ones on top by at least 2 points. So that covers our first 3 wildcard games. The fourth game is tomorrow at the 1:30 window Pacific time, and that is the San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is a hard one because I don't think this is a great matchup for the 49ers, specifically because their offensive line has been struggling significantly, and the Eagles have a pretty loaded defense. I also think it's a problem because they've been having trouble stopping the run, and, the Eagles have a pretty good offensive line. So I think those trenches battles don't line up well. I also know, as I mentioned earlier, that Vic Fangio has had Kyle Shanahan's number. His teams have never scored 20 before against a Fangio defense. But all that to say, Eagles are giving them 6 points at home against the 49ers, and I think that's too much. The Niners have been highly competitive. They had won 6 straight games in a row before the Seattle game, and even then it was like a nightmare scenario, and they still only lost by 10. Had a chance to make that 3 at the end of the game with one unlucky play going against them. So I'm going to take the Niners and the 6 points. I'm not overly confident that the Niners would win the game outright, but I think that they're extremely competitive. I think that spread is a little bloated because of how exposed the Niners got in the trenches against the Seattle Seahawks, but the Seahawks have the second best defense in the NFL, in my opinion, to the Texans, and that's not something that's going to happen every single game. They started off great, and the Niners fell behind, weren't getting possessions, and they were also out multiple key players like second-team All-Pro left tackle Trent Williams, who is the absolute anchor and star of their offensive line and one of their largest offensive investments. He's expected to be a go in Philadelphia, so I think that will help their line bounce back if they struggle, but also not start off behind the eight ball nearly as significantly. And this Niners offense has been rolling lately, so I expect them to be able to put up the 20-plus points this time, and it will be close because their defense has been struggling, but I'm not willing to lay 6 points against the Niners, who have been one of the best teams in the NFL over the last 2 months, especially offensively, putting up 34-ish points a game until that Seattle game. I think that was more of an aberration. I think with their two key players hopefully being back in Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall, the Niners offense will be much more competitive. I also think those other guys that got dominated by the Seahawks, they're got to fucking come back and play with a vengeance, because this is the playoffs now. They know this is all or nothing, and they got embarrassed last week, and they're going to have to want to flip the script and get some respect back and get some confidence back. So I expect the offensive line to play significantly better. I expect their offense to actually function this week. And if that's the case, then I doubt that they'll lose by more than 6 points. In game 4, I got the 49ers plus 6. The fifth game was the hardest one for me when looking at these spreads to make a choice on. Honestly, still haven't picked it. We're going to pick it live. So hope you're ready for some exciting action. To recap, while I think about this a little more, we got our 4 picks in of the 6 so far. We got the Carolina Panthers hosting the Rams. We're taking the plus 10 with the Panthers. We got the Chicago Bears hosting the Packers as underdogs. We're taking the 1.5 points for the home team Bears there. We're also taking the home team at minus 1.5, Jacksonville, to cover 1.5 over the Bills. And then the Panthers, we're taking our first road team here, and we're getting plus 6 points here. We don't expect the Eagles to be able to win by that much, so we're taking the 6 points, expecting a Niners offensive bounce back in general, plus getting their key players back. And now here we are to game 5. This is the Sunday night game, prime window, maybe best matchup, we shall see. And this is the Los Angeles Chargers at the New England Patriots, and this line was the most even one of any of the lines, close to what's expected. As we mentioned, the traditional line is the home team minus 3 if all other things are equal. This is the Patriots are favored by 3.5. They are the home team hosting the Chargers because they got the 2 seed in the AFC, and the Chargers are the 7 seed. They sat Justin Herbert and some other guys in Week 18 against the Broncos, not playing for the seeds, so they got to go to the Patriots. And this is going to be a really exciting matchup because there's a couple storylines here. The Patriots have been, maybe after Week 1 when they lost to the Raiders, which cost them the number 1 seed, so why they have to play in this wild card round. Since then, they've been the most consistent team in the NFL across the rest of the season. The other 17 weeks, other 16 games, Patriots have been very consistent. They've taken care of games against bad teams. But as many people will point out, they've only played a couple games against winning teams this year. Beating the shit out of the Dolphins and the Jets can only do so much to convince us that they're great. Personally, I'm not that worried about that. I think that they're great and they can't control their schedule, so why blame them for it? But the Chargers have blown expectations out of the water this year. I expected them to be a top 5 team-ish coming in, but then with the injuries to Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, the expectations changed dramatically, and I expect them to maybe be above 500. They still made the playoffs, and they've been highly competitive in all of their games. They've been really good in one-score games. So this is an exciting matchup because Justin Herbert will be 0-3 in the playoffs if he does not overcome this upset, and that's certainly going to be a talking point for him to rectify in his career as far as, we're doing our quarterback rankings. Where does he fall with the other great 7-8 quarterbacks in the league? All the others are doing significantly better than that. So that'll be a storyline if he loses his 3rd straight playoff game to start his playoff career. The Patriots, on the other hand, they've been this consistent, great, dominant team for most of the regular season. Can they take care of business at home against a team with a clear weakness? Can they exploit that weakness with their pass rush to be hitting Justin Herbert and forcing a couple turnovers on bad plays and take care of business at home? Personally, I think that the Patriots will take care of business at home. I think that the Patriots, I will give the 3.5 points. I've had bad luck betting against the Chargers throughout the middle of this season, overvaluing their tackle situation or undervaluing their ability to compensate for it. But here, I'm going to take the New England Patriots. They've just looked so fucking dialed lately that they have been able to have dominant performances. Their offense has been firing on all cylinders. So I will lay the 3.5 points with the Patriots this evening against the Chargers. I expect it to be close for the vast majority of the game, but if they can force a couple Justin Herbert turnovers by having a solid pass rush that's hitting him a bunch and putting him under pressure, they'll likely be able to get one interception. They'll also be able to get a fumble most likely. So I'm assuming that they'll score late to cover this spread. The final game that we have in the window is going to be all by itself on Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific. That is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, the benefactors of the Tyler Loop missed 44-yard field goal when their season was dead to rights. They didn't fucking block it. They didn't even ice him. They just sat there and said, oh, fuck, we're screwed. And then Ravens kicker bails them out. So now the Steelers win the division. The Steelers finish with, 10-7. And Aaron Rodgers makes the playoffs. And fun stat I saw today, Aaron Rodgers in 1 year, the Steelers has won more AFC North titles than the Browns have since they joined the AFC North in like 2000 or something like that. So one division title, Aaron Rodgers in 1 year. Browns still looking for their first one for the last about 24 years. But the Steelers did win the division. The Ravens couldn't make the kick, so they got to host this home playoff game versus the Texans. The Texans are favored by 3 as the road team, and I have no problem laying those points with the Texans. DK Metcalf is back. That will help the Steelers' offense be, not completely horrible. Granted, they had a pretty surprising fourth quarter performance against the Ravens and looked good late in that game, but I do not think that the Steelers' offense will be able to do enough in this game. The Texans' defense is the number 1 defense in the NFL, and I think that their pass rush is just going to be too much for Aaron Rodgers. He's going to get hit a bunch. That's not going to work out well for him. He's super old. I think that the pass rush of the Texans is going to be too much, and they're not limited by just their pass rush. They're also a great tackling team. They rally to the ball. They tackle guys where they make contact. They don't miss tackles. They have a number 1 corner, Derek Stingley Jr., who can cover Metcalf plenty. And although Metcalf is a number 1 receiver, he's not one of the elite top receivers in the game. And that's kind of the only legitimate weapon that they have on offense outside of their running back duo, who's pretty good. So I have no problem laying 3 with the road Texans going to Pittsburgh. I expect their defense to only surrender. I would say I'd be surprised if the Steelers scored more than 16. So it is going to take some work on the Texans offense to get a couple touchdowns. But if they can get 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, I think that should be plenty to win this game by more than 3. I think that, prediction for score on this game, I'm thinking Texans 23, Steelers 13. That's my prediction on this. So that covers the 3-point road spread that the Texans are given. And so that is my 6th of the 6 pick in the wild card round. We got the Panthers plus 10. We got the Bears plus 1.5. The Jaguars minus 1.5. We got the 49ers plus 6. We got the Patriots minus 3.5 and the Texans minus 3. The 2 teams that are waiting at home watching these, we got the number 1 seed Seattle Seahawks waiting to face the highest seed remaining. And then we also have the Denver Broncos waiting. And both of them are just going to be able to win 1 home game. And then they'll be in the AFC title game. And that's every team's dream. I don't care if you're the Chiefs that have been dominating or, a team that's up and coming trying to make a name for yourself and arrive. If you can make it to the title game in your conference, that's like, yes, you can ask for a Super Bowl. You can set your goals higher than that, and you should. But that really means you really got a shot. That's what you want every year. Get to that title game. Have a chance to play for the Super Bowl, have a chance to get to the Super Bowl, have a chance to win your conference. And if you can make that, that's huge. So getting that 1 seed is so advantageous because you can rest, scout, practice more, have more time to prepare than your opponent, host the game, and all you need to do is win one game to have a chance to play to go to the Super Bowl. And those are the Seahawks and the Broncos this week with two of the best three defenses in the NFL, in my opinion. I'd go Texans 1, Seahawks 2, and then Broncos is after those two for sure, but definitely a top 5 defense, and their pass rush is just astounding. The other thing I wanted to cover in this episode is a little bit on recapping what my playoff predictions were before this season, which teams were going to make the playoffs and which teams were going to win their division. I'll tell you right now, the division picks look fucking horrible. So I'm not going to spend too much time beating myself over that because this was honestly one of the most crazy seasons in recent NFL memory of like just teams going from first to worst and worst to first and like all over the place. I'd imagine most people's divisional rankings didn't end up too great this year. Most people probably took the Rams in the NFC West, or if not, maybe took the 49ers. I did think the Seahawks were going to be a good team this year. I thought that they were probably going to be around the 7 seed. I had them being the first team out, so missed that one. They did ascend quite well with Sam Darnold this year, and Mike McDonald, although I believed in him before, he's proven to be a very special coach through 2 years. The division winners I had this year coming in were the 49ers. That's a miss right there. They lost in week 18 to not win the division, but it came down to the final week and it was a closest game. So I had the Packers. The Packers did not end up being as good as everyone expected this year. I did think the Bears would get better, but I didn't think they'd go all the way to leading the division in year one. So that's a second miss right there. But both of them made the playoffs. Then I had the Bucs. That was a hard one for me. I was between Bucs and Falcons. Didn't really throw the Panthers in there much. Didn't expect them to ascend that much this year. All three of those teams ended up tying, and it came down to a tiebreaker. So that was missed by a tiebreaker because the Falcons ended up finishing really strong to screw the Bucs. So another miss. They missed the playoffs because of that weak division. The only division winner I got right, I went 1 for 8, which is wild because last year I placed a parlay when I was in Reno week 1. Only picked 6 of the division winners I felt good about. Went 5 for 6 and only the Niners cost me. So this year a lot rougher. But I called the Eagles. Seems like an easy pick now, but they had not been a repeat NFC East champion in roughly 24 years, or 22 years, I think it was. So called that repeat. And then I had the Chargers. I was a big believer in my preseason episode of the Chargers and the Broncos. Had the Chargers just edging them, and that was pretty close. So not a horrible pick there. I had the Ravens. The Ravens also came down. They were one 44-yard field goal away from winning the division. So the 49ers, the Bucs, and the Ravens can't really beat myself up over. They all came down basically to week 18. One loses a tiebreaker, one misses a 44-yard field goal, and one loses week 18 despite being the most injured team in the NFL. So those 3 picks missed, but they don't look too bad to me. I had the Texans winning the AFC South. That didn't end up coming to fruition, but if the Jaguars would have lost in the final week of the season, they would have won the AFC South. Again, very close pick there. And then I also had the Bills. I thought the Pats would be significantly better, but I did not think that they would be the second best team in the AFC by any means. Drake May has been the real deal. And although Matt Stafford's probably going to win the MVP, Drake May deserves a ton of votes and a ton of credit for playing a fantastic quarterback season, especially in year 2, year 1 of his offensive coordinator and his head coach regime. So fantastic job for them. So 1 of 8 on the division winners. The playoffs overall look better. I called 9 of the 14 playoff teams, which seems like missing a lot. But when you see the Chiefs going to 3 straight Super Bowls missing the playoffs, tell me how many people kept the Chiefs out of their fucking playoffs. I at least had the Chiefs as a wild card, not winning the division for the 9th or 10th time in a row. So that's, a small win there. I also had, the other key teams that missed the playoffs were Baltimore. Don't know how many kept them out of the playoffs, even if they had the Steelers or the Bengals winning the division. And Tampa Bay had won a few divisions in a row, and again lost a tiebreaker to not win the division. So not too mad at it, including those when they didn't come. The 2 that I was not close to calling was KC missing the playoffs entirely, and I still had Washington. Although I knew they would regress significantly, I still had them in there as a wild card. So again, I had the wild card teams as the Rams, the Commanders, and the Vikings. So the Rams Rams are the 5 seed. So I called the 5 seed will be the 6 and the 7 seed. I missed, but I did have the Niners making the playoffs. I did have the Packers making the playoffs, who are the 6 and 7 seed. I just had them as division winners in the 1 through 4 seed. The Vikings were the first team out of the playoffs. They were the 8 seed in the NFC, so didn't miss that one by much. And the Commanders, although they collapsed more than I thought, if Jaden Daniels had been healthy this year, then they probably would have been a lot better than they were. So not too crazy there. In the AFC playoff teams, I had the Chiefs at the 5 seed, the Steelers at the 6 seed, and the Broncos at the 7 seed. The Broncos way surpassed my expectations. They got all the way up to the 1 seed, and the Steelers, instead of the 6 seed, got the 4 seed, and the Chiefs are out of the playoffs. So I called 9 of the 14 playoff teams, and that would be the 49ers, the Packers, the Eagles, the Chargers, the Texans, the Bills, the Rams, the Steelers, and the Broncos. The division winners don't look very good, but the playoff teams, 9 of 14, is pretty solid for a crazy year. Saw a few things happening, like the Broncos improving and the Steelers getting in the Aaron Rodgers era. So those were my preseason predictions. Last couple notes that we want to go over in this episode before we conclude. First, a couple NFL updates. Matt Ryan was just hired by the Atlanta Falcons to be their president of football. We'll see how that goes. They talk about him being their best player in franchise history. Obviously, never won the Super Bowl. He won the MVP in 2016, had the most famous Super Bowl collapse, 28-3 to the Patriots. But he seems like he got a good head on his shoulders. We'll see how he does. The Falcons haven't made the playoffs or they've had 8 straight non-winning seasons. Pretty long streak. So they fired Raheem Morris. Matt Ryan's going to be huge in helping them hire their next general manager and their head coach. I don't think they interviewed many other candidates. I think Arthur Blank just has the trust in Matt Ryan, and so he's going to pay him to not be a CBS analyst anymore. So that's probably a pretty hefty salary. Good gig for Matt Ryan. We'll see if he's any good at it. Mike McDaniel, since my head coach firing episode, has been fired by the Miami Dolphins. So that's honestly not the end of the world for him. I know obviously it's a bummer to get fired, but he's in high demand right now. He has a chance to get one of the other 7 head coach openings right now with some teams that'll definitely look for an offensive guy. I know that the Giants are probably looking at Harbaugh first, but they might be interested in Mike McDaniel after that to help Jackson Dart and that young offense elevate. The Titans have already requested to interview Mike McDaniel to be their next head coach. They have Cam Ward obviously looking for an offensive guy to come in and help build there. They got a lot of work to do, but so I'm sure there's a lot of interest with them for him in this position. And also, even if he doesn't land one of the head coaching jobs, it is an absolute guarantee that he'll be an offensive coordinator of a good team if he does not get one of these head coaching jobs, because there's such a need right now for these top OCs to turn around some shitty offenses and to save or help propel some of these young quarterbacks. So teams like the Titans we talked about, that's where they're looking for a great offensive mind. But additionally, the Giants need a great offensive coordinator. And then the Lions are a team that absolutely needs a real deal offensive coordinator to turn things around. Depending on who gets the head coaching job, the Ravens might be interested in Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator, help Lamar Jackson bounce back. So I definitely think that he will be either a head coach in one of those 6 spots, or he'll be an offensive coordinator of a pretty dope team that already has a solid head coach there, like the Lions or the Ravens, like the Lions. The other NFL update that we have before we get to the final segment of this episode is the Dolphins did hire a general manager, which is huge for them because you don't want to be behind the 8 ball in this search when there's 8 teams looking for a head coach and obviously coordinators. You don't want to be the last domino falling, and that doesn't bode well for the future of that regime. You want to have more of your pick of the litter and be aggressive, pulling talent before the other NFL teams swoop it all up. So I don't know much about John Eric Sullivan, who was in the personnel department at the Green Bay Packers, but he's been hired as the Miami Dolphins' next general manager. And so now the Dolphins can move forward with trying to solidify their head coach and their offensive and defensive coordinator positions, and then start, preparing for the rest of the offseason. So the final thing I wanted to mention, I don't follow a ton of college football. I keep in the know about the big things and the big games, the big scores, the big players. But watching Indiana University last night, I would be remiss if I do not mention how this is one of the best sports stories I've ever seen in my fucking life. And I could talk all fucking day, all week, all year about great sports stories and teams that overcame adversity, and John Wooden's principles with UCLA basketball that have reverberated throughout the coaching ranks forever, and Nick Saban, and all these great stories. Today is actually the 44-year anniversary of the catch. Dwight Clark, the greatest moment in 49ers history, finally overcoming the Cowboys and getting us to our first Super Bowl that my family went to and watched in Michigan against the Bengals, which we won. So there's a lot of great sports stories out there. Indiana University, turnaround of their football team under Curt Cignetti is one of the greatest sports stories I've ever seen. It would be great if he got them to a bowl game. If he got them to be, 10-4, or, winning a bowl game, or ranked in the top 25 would be phenomenal. They have the most losses in the history of college football, Division I. They have been around for 100 plus years and they've always been horrible. They had not won an outright conference championship in 80 years. And not only did he turn around this absolute abysmal cellar dweller, embarrassing, depressing program, but he did it immediately, and he's not only making them winners or winning a bowl game or getting ranked, they're the number one team in the country in year 2. In year 1, he didn't have the chance to recruit many guys. He doesn't have anywhere near the talent that these other teams have as far as 5 and 4 and 3-star recruits. Yet he's immediately turned around this program, getting ranked and going to the college football playoff last year. And this year they're now undefeated, 15-0, and they've knocked off the likes of the top programs in the nation, in the Oregon Ducks, who they dismantled, who the Ohio State Buckeyes, who they handled fairly easily. And this is without these 5-star prospects and 4-star prospects. They're doing it with 3 and 2-star prospects. They're doing it with older guys. Their average team age is 23, whereas a lot of these other elite programs have all these freshman, sophomore, junior players that are 4-star recruits. These guys are doing it with transfers that are 4, 5, and 6 years into college, and we're 2-star recruits that are now 4 or 5-year players at other smaller D1 or D2 programs. And if this doesn't tell you that coaching is the most important factor in winning, I don't know what does, because there's no other way to explain this turnaround with the talent deficiency, with the 100-year history of their program sucking, and now they're number one, beating the best programs in the nation that have been doing this forever. It is absolutely amazing, and their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, is such a fantastic story. He just won the Heisman. He was at Cal prior, and there's a great article in the Press Democrat that came out, I believe, a couple months ago, if you look at it, talking about Fernando Mendoza when he was the 3rd stringer at Cal, obviously not playing at all, and he just has the hunger, the work ethic, the desire to be great. So he's going to his offensive coaches, who will spend extra time with me watching film so I can get this, so I can develop, so I can be ready when I get my opportunity. And the guy that helped Fernando Mendoza make this meteoric rise, that's Tim Plow, the head coach now at UC Davis, where I went to college, and he's done a great job with their program at UC Davis. They made it to the round of the 8 in the FCS playoffs this year, but he was the tight ends coach at Cal when Mendoza was the 3rd string quarterback. Mendoza had this hunger, this will, this desire to improve, to change his circumstances, to be the best that he could be. So he reached out to the offensive coaches who can invest extra time in me, helping me grow and develop and understand defenses and football IQ. And Tim Plow was the coach, and of course, I'll do that for you, dude. So he's going over nights at Tim Plow's house, and they're watching film from 9 to 12 at night, having dinner with his family. And this dude's doing this as a 3rd string quarterback at Cal, doing everything he can, so when he gets his chance, he's ready. And then what does he do? He transfers to Indiana under Curt Cignetti, and he is ready. He's the Heisman winner, and now you see in their 2 college football playoff games after their first round bye, he has more touchdown passes than incompletions, which is an absolutely bonkers stat to have in any game. Nonetheless, playing literally the best teams in the nation in the college football playoff on the biggest stage with all the lights, all the people watching, and this dude is absolutely balling the fuck out. And so gotta give my flowers to Curt Cignetti for one of the best coaching turnarounds, maybe the best coaching turnaround I've ever seen in my life. It's one thing to build a program, it's another to do it in 2 years and to go from the bottom to the top, be beating the Ohio States and the Oregons, amazing. And Fernando Mendoza looks so fucking dialed right now. This dude has everything. He's got the arm talent you're looking for. He's got the physical build at 6'5" that you're looking for. He is the most humble, kind, hardworking dude that you could imagine. He's got the IQ because of all the time that he put in with Tim Plow as a 3rd stringer at Cal, studying film into the night to increase his chances of future success. Bam, great return on that investment with a Heisman Trophy winner. And he is extremely accurate. His footwork is fantastic. And he is just absolutely dialed in right now. They're one win away from winning Indiana's first national championship in program history over 100 years. And that would cap maybe the best season in the history of college football. It's being compared with the Joe Burrow LSU year in 2019, how they just dominated, went undefeated, and blew everyone out. Except this isn't LSU that's been a juggernaut for a long time. This is Indiana, which is just arriving on the scene, so people just can't believe it. It's been a fantastic story. And tying this back to the NFL, the Raiders finally have hope. It's been the most depressing season. Pete Carroll fired after year one. Geno Smith, horrible. Offensive line, worst in the NFL. Do we have to trade our only dope franchise player, Max Crosby, to succeed? Being a Raiders fan has been outright depressing. They haven't won a playoff game since 2002, then the AFC Championship game to get to the Super Bowl, which they lost to John Gruden and the Bucs, throwing 5 interceptions. And since then, they have not won a playoff game. They've been terrible for a long time, but the Raiders finally have hope. That is because they tanked well enough and the Giants screwed up, and the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. They need a quarterback, and there's an exciting quarterback prospect there. It is almost a lock that Fernando Mendoza is going to go to the Raiders, and not only does he have the physical tools to do that, he's got the body and the arm built right, but he also has the best head you could ever ask for. He's the best teammate, the highest IQ, the highest work ethic, the most humble dude. So he's not a dude that's going to be going off and partying or taking his millions and not caring. So they got the highest character dude they can ask for, and he may be the national champion and the Heisman winner and the best quarterback in the nation. So there's finally hope for Raiders fans. They draft that quarterback number 1 overall. Now they have a quarterback that can help make their team look way better than it is, rather than how their team's been exacerbated because of such horrible quarterback play the last 2 years. Now they know they got to build that offensive line to help keep him upright and give him a chance to succeed. They already have elite weapons in Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty that are young and as good as anyone basically at their position. So the Raiders have hope. They're going to take Mendoza, and that's going to wrap up this episode of Big Dawg Sports Unleashed. Thank you so much for listening. Let's see how these 6 picks against the spread in the wild card round go. Go 49ers, and let's hope for some fantastic games and an epic playoffs to finish this fantastic NFL season of parody that we've already got to watch.